and welcome to Broken Entertainment. So today I'm going to do a book review on The Grace of Kings by Ken Liu. This is the first Chinese epic fantasy novel that I have listened to, and it's part of my quest to learn more about Chinese fantasy and kind of get inspiration for one of the nations in my epic fantasy project. So there were a couple of different novels suggested to me before I set out to do this, and they all sounded interesting, but I really wanted one that was supposed to be a completely different world and a completely alternate fantasy reality with world building and all that. And so that's why I chose Grace of Kings over stuff that was recommended to me. Now, there is world building in this, certainly. I've seen it classified as silk punk fantasy. Maybe, I guess, depending on how you're classifying that. It is definitely not our world. It's certainly a fantasy world, and yet at the same time, it is very, very Han Dynasty China. And in fact, to the point that if you know Han history, you pretty much know what's going to happen in the book, for the most part. And there's a lot of stuff in this book, and I kind of took some time to really think about how I felt about it. And ultimately, when I finished it on Audible, I gave it a 3-star rating, and that's what I'm going to do here. I'm going to give it a 3-star rating. It's not a book that I would immediately leap to recommend. It's also not a book that I think isn't worth reading. I think it's well crafted. I think the technical aspects of the book are very good. I think the world building is good. I think the outlines of the characters are interesting. But it is a plot-driven and not a character-driven novel. If you're not prepared for that, it's a big step in a different direction from what you're used to reading. And as far as I'm aware, I could be wrong. If I am, and you know that, please let me know in the comments. As far as I'm aware, that's pretty typical of Chinese epics. It's more plot-driven, more filial piety-driven than it is character-driven. So that falls in line pretty well then with what you would expect. However, for me, I have a hard time connecting with that, especially when I'm listening to the book, and there's a lot of points where I'm just like, okay, I know where this is going. And part of that's because I'm researching Han China at the same time. I also have some background in Han Chinese history, though it's been a long time, so I've had to refresh myself. And I'm like, man, instead of going, oh, I wonder how they're going to get out of this, I'm like, oh yeah, this is, it took to about the halfway point of the book. But right around then, I'm like, oh, I know where this is going. And I missed some stuff and went back and looked up some more history. And then I'm like, oh, yep, if I had known that, I would have seen that coming 100 years away. And when it really cemented for me that it's not borrowing from Han Chinese history, it's just using it, was when one of the characters, and this is a Chinese legend, so it's I'm not even sure this particular legend fits in with Han China itself, but it's just one of those things that really struck me. Is a character, it's a side character, does something very similar to what the Chinese legendary hero Yu Fei did, and I'm immediately like, oh, and that's later in the book. It's past the halfway point by a fair margin. The other issue with this book that I have is this could have been 3 books. There's a lot of time crushed into this book, and there's effectively 3 major plots. One of them's pretty short. One of them occupies 80, 85, maybe even 90% of the book, and then the other one occupies the rest. And it's like, you're really putting so much into this book, and there's a lot of time skipping, and there's a lot of, and then they did this, and then they went here, and they did this, and then they went here, and this happened. And I'm like, slow down, man. They're doing stuff that would have been an entire book in something like the Stormlight Archives, or at the very least, a large chunk of a book. And they're doing it over and over again in this book. So those were the 2 points that I really had difficulty connecting with this book on. Now, like I said, it's well crafted. The world building is good. The way things work makes sense. The inspiration, when it's inspiration rather than just straight up lifted from Han Chinese history, is really good. And those are the best elements of the book, is when it doesn't just take something from history, but goes out, for example, there are airships in this setting, and it explains why and how. And they're really cool. And the way those end up being used, and the way they revolutionize warfare, and the scenes they're in are all really awesome. And there's another technology that, for spoiler reasons, I don't want to get into, but it's really cool when it comes out, and you're like, these are the strong points of the book, and I feel like if the author had focused more on that sort of thing, I would have had a bigger connection to the book. As it was, the last 10% of the book, I really had to force myself to finish. And I hate to say that. I don't like to say that about books, but I did. I had to force, because at that point, I saw the writing on the wall. I pretty much knew exactly what was going to happen. There were a couple twists here and there, but I'm like, yeah, okay. And I just didn't really feel for any of the characters all that much anymore. The characters, two of the characters develop a little bit over time, but for the most part, they don't develop. And that's part of the style. It's not a mistake. It's not a writing technicality issue. It's part of the style, as far as I understand. But it's not my kind of book in that regard. But there's a lot of interesting stuff about it. And frankly, if you don't know Han Chinese history, you'll probably be more immersed in the book than I was, because you're not going to have those moments where you're like, oh yeah, that's what that is. And you'll have a little bit more joy out of it in that regard. Now, if you want to just see something that's very different from what you normally read in epic fantasy, if you want to see a different genre of epic fantasy, really, and a different way of storytelling, and some good world building and good technical writing, I mean, it's the prose is good. It's not fantastic, but it's good. Then it's a good book. But it's not gonna blow you away. It's not gonna make you fall in love. At least for me, it didn't make me fall in love with it. It's one of those books where there's 2 more books after this. I'm not gonna look into them. I'd rather just go and listen to another Christopher Rocchio book, or another Brandon Sanderson book, or try out another Chinese epic somewhere. I'm still trying to find those Chinese epics. I want one to grab me like the Stormlight Archive has, or like the Sun Eater series has, and really invest my interest and time in a way that this book did not. I really, really want to see that, but I'm not there yet. And the fantasy novels that have been suggested to me that are based in Chinese lore, and that have been said to be really good, aren't written by Chinese authors. Now, this Ken Liu is Chinese American, and I really wanted that authentic writing perspective. I don't think I really got it. That's what I was aiming for. I didn't get it. Now, to write an epic Chinese fantasy novel, you do not need to be Chinese. I'm not going there. Not saying that. I just was thinking, they'll bring some stuff into it that I wouldn't get otherwise necessarily. Now, I will say, as far as my writing and world building goes, it actually helped a lot. One thing I was struggling with was, how do I incorporate Asian, I know it's a big word, right? How do I incorporate Chinese, Southeast Asian type of culture into a fantasy world, and both make it my own and also have those little bits of writing that really draw you in. And, it's so easy when you're writing something Western because we're from the West. You can say, okay, yeah, and they did this, they ate this kind of food. Those little daily things that really suck you into a world. And it did that very well. And I took a lot of mental notes from that because I'm like, wow, okay, just the way they sat. There's different sitting postures. There's different types of food, for different occasions and so on. That stuff didn't occur to me. And I'm like, you know what? The sitting position thing is something I really got to look into because that's very, very common in South Asian and Asian societies in general is different sitting postures, especially ones influenced by China, for different, varying depending on who you're dealing with, on what's going on, and so on and so forth. So a lot of that symbolism really stuck out to me, and I'm like, yes, this is what I'm looking for. Now, it didn't really draw me into the book because of other issues with the book that I had, but it definitely, from world building perspective and writing perspective, I now know some things that I can use in my own writing going forward. That's great. Because one of the things I was looking for was those little things that if you don't have the experience, you might not necessarily think about. Even doing a lot of research on culture, lore, history, you may not come across that kind of thing that to someone native to the culture is just an everyday thing. It's pre-programmed in. It's like shaking hands in the West, right? So that kind of thing really stuck out. It was very useful for me. The rest of it, I'm not going to say don't recommend it, and I'm not going to say recommend it. How about that? It's 3 stars. If you like plot-driven, if you don't know much about Han China, or you do and would love to see Han Chinese history played out in a fantasy setting, then it's the book for you, and it can be a lot of fun. But for those of you who are character-driven, who want to see character development, and who don't want to see history simply lifted from the pages and put through a fantasy filter and put back on the pages, it's not great. But the writing is good. The author is clearly good at their craft. So it's not one of those books I'm just like, don't pick this up, right? It's just going to depend on your personal preferences. My preference, So my next book that I'm going to be going through, I won't be getting for a couple of weeks, and then I'll get started on listening to that, and we'll kind of go from there. So excited to be moving forward with my list of stuff to listen to. Kind of disappointed in the book. Probably not one of those ones that I'll keep. I have some books that I keep downloaded on my phone, and I will re-listen to them pretty frequently. This isn't going to be one of them, personally. So if you've read the book and you liked it, let me know in the comments down below. If you've read the book and you hated it, or didn't like it, or felt like I did, let me know in the comments down below. If you liked the video, please hit the like button. If you're not subscribed, please consider subscribing. Ring the bell for notifications, and I will see you next time.